Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
I want to begin with a simple truth. How we start our day shapes how we live our day. Every morning before the world's noise barges into your mind, you have a sacred window, a fragile golden moment when your thoughts, emotions, and spirit are wide open. And in that moment, you get to choose, will you feed your soul or will you just start reacting to life? Most of us wake up, check our phones, scroll through social media, and compare our messy, unfiltered lives to someone else's highlight reel. We hand over our peace before our feet even hit the floor. But I've learned, both from research and from my own messy, imperfect mornings, that there are 3 things you can do at the start of your day to fill it with purpose, courage, and connection. When I talk about starting your day with gratitude, I'm not talking about some Pinterest perfect morning routine where you're sipping herbal tea on a balcony while the sunrise pours gold over the mountains. I'm talking about something much more raw, much more human, and honestly, much more necessary. Here's the truth: every single one of us wakes up carrying a mental load. Even before you open your eyes, your brain is already firing. What's on my calendar? Did I forget to pay that bill? What if today goes wrong? What if I can't do it all? It's like your mind's already sprinting and you haven't even left the bed. That's because our brains are wired for survival, not joy. From an evolutionary perspective, our minds are designed to scan for threats and problems first. The primitive part of your brain doesn't care about happiness, it cares about making sure you're still breathing by nightfall. So, without any intentionality, the first emotions we often feel in the morning are anxiety, stress, or that low-grade dread that hums under the surface. But here's where gratitude comes in, not as a soft, fluffy, be positive platitude, but as a radical interruption of that fear loop. I remember one season of my life where mornings felt like an ambush. I was going through a divorce, trying to keep my career afloat, and every time I woke up, it was like the weight of everything slammed into me before my feet hit the floor. I'd reach for my phone, scroll through social media, and within seconds, I was comparing my messy, unraveling life to other people's curated perfection. And without fail, I'd feel smaller, more behind, more broken. One morning, in a moment of pure desperation, I tried something new. I sat on the edge of my bed, put my phone face down, and just whispered to myself, name 3 things you're grateful for. It felt awkward at first, like I was forcing myself to see a silver lining when there wasn't one, but I tried. And that day, my list was embarrassingly simple. My coffee machine still works. My dog is healthy. I have socks. It didn't feel profound. But something shifted. My heart slowed down. The tension in my chest eased just a little. And that tiny shift was enough to carry me to the shower, enough to make me think, okay, maybe I can get through today. That's the thing about gratitude. It doesn't have to be poetic to be powerful. In fact, some of the most life-changing gratitude practices are made up of the smallest, most ordinary moments. The smell of toast. The way your kid's hair sticks up in the morning. The soft hum of the fridge in a quiet kitchen. And here's what's wild: research backs this up. Neuroscience tells us that gratitude actually rewires the brain. When you actively notice and name what you're thankful for, you're building new neural pathways that make it easier for your mind to see the good. You're literally teaching your brain to search for blessings before it hunts for problems. But I'll be honest, gratitude is easy when life is good. The real work is finding it when life feels unbearable. And that's why it's so important to start your day with it. Because in the mornings, before the chaos begins, you have a clean slate, a moment when you get to set the tone. If you fill that moment with fear, the whole day bends toward fear. If you fill it with thanks, the whole day shifts toward possibility. When I first committed to this practice, it felt clumsy. Some mornings I was still drowning in my own worries, and my gratitude lists sounded more like survival checklists. I'm breathing, I have a roof. My coffee's hot. But what I didn't realize then was that those small recognitions were quietly teaching my brain a new language. Over time, it became more natural. I started seeing things I'd overlooked, like the way sunlight hits the kitchen counter at 8 a.m., or the exact laugh my best friend makes when she's really gone past polite laughter into the deep, can't breathe kind. Gratitude didn't make my problems disappear, but it gave me a wider lens. And when your lens is wider, problems feel smaller, not because they shrink, but because you remember they're not the whole picture. Starting your day with gratitude is also an act of reclaiming your attention. In today's world, your attention is currency, and every notification, every ad, every headline is competing for it. If the first thing you do in the morning is open your phone, you've already surrendered your most valuable mental space to someone else's agenda. Gratitude takes that space back. It says, before I give myself to the world, I'm going to give myself a moment to see what's already good in my world. And I get it. Some of you might be thinking, I'm not a morning person. That's okay. Gratitude isn't about waking up at 5 a.m. with a journal and perfect penmanship. It's about pausing, even if it's just for 30 seconds, before you dive into the day. You can do it while you brush your teeth, while the coffee brews, while you're still lying in bed. The important thing is to make it a ritual. Because rituals tell your brain, this matters. And over time, your brain starts expecting it, craving it even. It becomes the way you open the door to your day. One of the most beautiful things about starting your day with gratitude is that it's contagious. When you notice and name what you're grateful for, you start speaking differently. You're quicker to say, thank you, to a stranger. You're more patient in traffic. You're less likely to take the people you love for granted. And those small ripples change the way you move through the world. And the way the world moves around you. There's a quote I love, gratitude turns what we have into enough. I think it's even more than that. Gratitude turns what we have into more than enough. It turns it into fuel. Fuel to face hard days. Fuel to dream bigger. Fuel to show up for people in ways you couldn't if you were stuck in scarcity mode. So tomorrow morning, before your feet touch the floor, before the gravity of the day pulls you into its orbit, just ask yourself what's good here. What's worth noticing? What's worth holding in my heart before the noise begins? And don't overthink it. Gratitude doesn't need to be fancy. It just needs to be felt. Because when you start your day with thanks, even the smallest thanks, you're not just filling your morning, you're filling your life. If gratitude is about what you already have, intention is about who you want to be. And if you're anything like me, you know how easy it is to wake up, let the day sweep you away, and then by nightfall, wonder where the hours went, and worse, whether you actually showed up the way you wanted to. This is why intention setting is not just a nice idea. It's a form of self-leadership. It's telling yourself, I refuse to live my day on autopilot. Because here's the truth, if you don't choose who you're going to be today, someone else will choose for you. And most of the time, they're not going to choose the version of you that you're proud of. I learned this the hard way. Years ago, I was juggling so much. Kids, deadlines, speaking events. Trying to keep the house from looking like a crime scene, that most mornings I didn't even think about who I wanted to be that day. I just woke up and started reacting. The kids were fighting. I reacted. An email came in with bad news. I reacted. My plans changed unexpectedly. I reacted. By the end of the day, I felt drained, scattered, and honestly ashamed of some of the ways I'd handled things. One morning, after a particularly rough week, a mentor of mine asked me, Brené, when you woke up, did you tell yourself who you wanted to be today? I laughed, thinking it was a joke. But he was serious. If you don't claim your identity before the world starts talking, he said, you'll spend all day being whoever the world tells you to be. That was a gut punch. Because that's exactly what I'd been doing, letting circumstances, not courage, dictate my behavior. So I started experimenting with a new ritual. Each morning, after gratitude, I'd take 60 seconds to ask myself one question, who do I want to be today? Not, what do I need to get done? Because that's a to-do list. This was about a to-be list. Some mornings, the answer was clear, I want to be patient. Especially when I knew I'd be navigating back-to-back meetings or helping my teenager with algebra at 9 p.m. Other mornings, it was I want to be courageous, because I had a hard conversation on the calendar. And sometimes, it was I want to be joyful, because I'd been living in a loop of seriousness for too long. The thing about intention is that it works like a compass. It doesn't control what happens during your day, but it keeps you oriented. Even if you drift off course, you have a way to realign. And believe me, I drift all the time. I'll snap at someone even though I set patience as my intention, or I'll get so focused on tasks that I forget joy. What's the point? But here's the difference. When you've named your intention, you notice when you're off track. Without intention, you can spend all day lost and not even realize it. There's also science behind this. Psychologists call it priming. When you consciously set an intention, you prime your brain to look for opportunities to fulfill it. If your intention is kindness, you'll start noticing small moments where you can extend it. A smile to the barista, letting someone merge in traffic, sending that text you've been putting off. Without the intention, those moments slip past unnoticed. I remember one day when my intention was generosity. I didn't have a plan for how that would look, but as I moved through the day, little chances popped up. I paid for the coffee of the person behind me in line. I took an extra 5 minutes to help a colleague who was struggling. I gave my son an extra long hug when he came home from school instead of rushing him so I could get back to my email. None of these moments were huge, but at the end of the day, I felt this deep, quiet satisfaction, like I had lived on purpose. Here's the thing, setting an intention doesn't require an elaborate morning routine or a perfectly quiet house. You can do it while you brush your teeth. You can do it in the shower. You can even do it in the car before you walk into work. The point isn't when or how you do it. It's that you do it before the chaos begins. Because once you're in the whirlwind, it's so much harder to pause and decide who you want to be. And yes, there will be days when you fail spectacularly at living your intention. You'll decide you want to be patient, and by 9:30 a.m., you'll be snapping at everyone in sight. You'll set your intention for courage, and you'll still back out of the conversation you needed to have. I want you to hear me clearly. That doesn't make the practice worthless. In fact, those off days are often the ones that teach you the most, because they reveal the gap between your ideal self and your current patterns. And you can't close that gap if you don't know it's there. There's a vulnerability in naming your intention. You're saying, this is the kind of person I want to be, which also implies, I'm not there yet. But that's where growth lives, in the willingness to admit you're a work in progress. The beauty of intention setting is that it's flexible. Some days, you might have a single word. Other days, you might have a short mantra, I will lead with love. I will listen more than I speak. I will be present. The more you practice, the more fluent you become in the language of your own values. And here's something powerful I've learned. When you set an intention in the morning, you're not just impacting your own day, you're shaping the emotional weather for the people around you. If you walk into a room anchored in calm, it changes the tone for everyone else. If you approach your partner or your kids with curiosity instead of criticism, it shifts the conversation. Your intention becomes a gift to others, not just yourself. So tomorrow morning, before you dive into emails or pour that first cup of coffee, take 60 seconds. Breathe. Ask yourself, who do I want to be today? Then carry that answer with you like a lantern. Because here's what I know, the world doesn't need more people who are just busy or just productive. The world needs more people who are intentional, who live on purpose, not just by default. And it starts with that one quiet, intentional moment in the morning, before the noise, before the demands, before the world tries to tell you who you are. Movement is one of the most underrated ways to start a day. And I'm not talking about the kind of movement that requires fancy leggings, a personal trainer, or a gym membership. I'm talking about the simple act of using your body before the day uses you. For years, I thought of movement as something you did only if you had the time, energy, or a burning desire to get in shape. It was this extra thing, like a bonus round in the game of self-care. And because my mornings were usually crammed with responsibilities, it was almost always the first thing to go. I'd tell myself, I'll move later. Later never came. But here's what I learned: our bodies aren't just transportation devices for our brains. They are deeply tied to our emotions, our focus, and our resilience. How we treat our bodies in the morning affects how our minds function for the rest of the day. One of the turning points for me came after a period of serious burnout. I was exhausted, foggy, and irritable, pretty much running on caffeine and sheer willpower. A friend of mine, a therapist, gently suggested, before you check your email in the morning, just take 10 minutes to move your body. I rolled my eyes. 10 minutes. How could that possibly matter? But I tried it. That first day, I didn't do anything intense. I just walked around my block, breathing in the cool morning air, noticing the sound of my feet hitting the pavement. 10 minutes. That's it. But I came home feeling a little more awake, a little more grounded, a little more here. The science behind this is incredible. Movement, whether it's walking, stretching, dancing, or yoga, signals to your brain that you're alive, safe, and ready to engage with the world. It boosts oxygen to the brain, which improves focus. It releases endorphins, which elevate mood. And it lowers cortisol, the stress hormone that often spikes the moment you open your eyes. Think about it. So many of us start our mornings in our heads, already worrying, planning, or replaying yesterday's mistakes. Movement pulls us out of that swirl and brings us back into our bodies. It says, I'm here now. This is my starting point. And movement doesn't have to look the same for everyone. Some mornings, I stretch on my living room floor while my coffee brews. Other days, I put on a song that makes me feel unstoppable and dance like no one's watching. Because no one is watching, except maybe my dog, and he seems to approve. If I'm traveling, I'll do a quick hotel room workout or walk around the block before heading to a meeting. The key is to do something, because movement is less about the intensity and more about the message you're sending yourself. You're saying, I matter enough to take care of me before I take care of everything else. There's a vulnerability to starting your day in your body, especially if you've spent years ignoring it or feeling disconnected from it. For a long time, I treated my body like a machine. Push it, demand from it, ignore its signals. It wasn't until I started using morning movement as a form of listening instead of demanding that I noticed a change. Now, some mornings my body says, let's go for a jog. Other mornings it says, stretch gently and breathe. And some days, my body says, girl, we're just walking to the kitchen and back today, and I honor that too. Here's what happens when you start the day with movement. You're not just waking up your muscles. You're waking up your courage. Movement has this incredible way of breaking emotional inertia. That's why even on mornings when I feel stuck or heavy, a few minutes of moving shifts something inside me. It's like the physical act of putting one foot in front of the other reminds me that progress, any progress, is possible. I also think of movement as a form of emotional hygiene. Just like brushing your teeth in the morning prevents buildup and decay, moving your body in the morning clears away the mental and emotional residue from the day before. That fight you had yesterday, that anxiety that followed you to bed. Movement helps shake some of it loose so it doesn't define your new day. And here's something really powerful. Movement in the morning sets the tone for how you handle challenges later on. When your body has been reminded, we can do hard things, your mind is more likely to believe it too. Even a short burst of movement builds moments of resilience that carry into every conversation, decision, and obstacle you face that day. But I want to be clear, this isn't about chasing perfection. It's not about never missing a day or turning movement into another metric to judge yourself by. It's about creating a rhythm that supports you. If you miss a morning, you haven't failed. You just start again tomorrow. And I'll tell you this, when you stick with it, even imperfectly, the shift is undeniable. You'll start noticing that you feel less reactive, more focused, and more in tune with yourself. You might find that you're more patient in traffic or less thrown off when plans change. You might catch yourself smiling more often for no particular reason. That's the quiet magic of starting your day in your body. One of my favorite ways to think about morning movement comes from a story I once heard about a marathon runner. When asked how she stayed motivated to train every single day, she said, I don't commit to running every day. I commit to putting on my shoes. That's it, because she knew that once her shoes were on, the rest would follow. For me, it's the same. I don't commit to a perfect workout. I commit to starting. So tomorrow morning, before you pour your coffee or check your phone, give yourself 10 minutes. Walk, stretch, dance, breathe, whatever feels like a gift to your body. And if 10 minutes feels impossible, start with 5. Start with 2. Start with 1 song. The point is to remind yourself, I'm alive. I'm here. I'm worth the movement. Because when you move your body before you move the world, you're not just starting your day, you're setting the foundation for how you'll meet it. There's something sacred about the first hour of your morning. It's the doorway between who you were yesterday and who you're becoming today. But here's the hard truth. Most of us don't guard that doorway. We leave it wide open for anything and anyone to walk through. And more often than not, the first guests into our day aren't welcome. The ping of a text message, the endless scroll of social media, the news cycle designed to stir your fear, the avalanche of emails, each one a tiny demand, whispering, "You're already behind." It's no wonder so many of us feel depleted before we've even eaten breakfast. I call this closing the gate. Every morning, you stand at the gate of your mind, heart, and soul. You get to decide what you let in first. And yet, most of us don't even realize we're the gatekeepers. We just react. We open the door without asking who's knocking. I used to start my mornings like that, reaching for my phone before I'd even sat up in bed. My thumb would start scrolling before my brain was fully awake. Within 5 minutes, I'd be knee-deep in comparison, anxiety, and distraction. And here's the sneaky part. I would tell myself I was just catching up. But in reality, I was letting other people's priorities set my tone for the day. Then one morning, during a particularly stressful season of deadlines and travel, I woke up and realized my heart was already racing. I hadn't even left the bed, and I was in fight or flight mode. Something in me snapped. I thought, I can't live like this anymore. That day, I decided no more phone in the first hour. No news. No emails. No digital noise. I was going to guard the gate of my morning. The first few days were hard, uncomfortable even. I didn't realize how much I'd been using that phone scroll as a numbing tool. Without it, I had to actually sit with myself. I had to feel the stillness, the quiet, and the emotions I'd been skipping past. But slowly, something started to shift. By protecting the first hour, I started experiencing mornings as they were meant to be: slow, intentional, human. I made coffee and actually tasted it. I listened to the sound of my kids' feet shuffling down the hall. I noticed the way the light spilled across the kitchen counter, and I realized this hour was mine. Not my inbox's, not the internet's, mine. Guarding your mornings isn't just about avoiding negativity. It's about choosing what you want to fill yourself with first. For some people, that's prayer or meditation. For others, it's reading something that inspires them. For me, it's a combination: gratitude, intention, movement. Those 3 things have become my first guests. The research here is fascinating. Psychologists talk about primacy effect, the idea that the first thing you experience in a sequence disproportionately shapes your perception of everything that follows. What you let in first colors how you interpret the rest of your day. Start with chaos, and you'll be looking through a lens of chaos. Start with peace, and you'll be scanning for more of it. But here's where it gets real. Guarding your mornings requires boundaries, and boundaries are uncomfortable. Saying, "I don't check my phone for the first hour," feels like you're breaking some unwritten rule of the modern world. People might even get frustrated when you don't respond right away. But I've learned this: the people who truly care about you will adapt. And the ones who can adapt were never looking out for your well-being in the first place. Guarding your morning also means protecting it from your own habits. Distraction isn't always coming from the outside. It's often self-inflicted. Sometimes we avoid stillness because stillness is where the truth shows up. And truth can be messy. If you've been running on empty for too long, that first quiet moment might be uncomfortable. But here's the gift: discomfort is where clarity begins. When you learn to guard the gate of your morning, you start seeing the ripple effects everywhere. You walk into your workday calmer, less reactive. You meet your family with more patience. You notice beauty instead of scanning for problems. And perhaps most importantly, you start living on purpose instead of by accident. I think about my grandmother sometimes when I talk about this. She didn't have smartphones or endless notifications to compete with. But she still guarded her mornings fiercely. She'd wake before everyone else, make herself a cup of tea, and sit by the window for half an hour. No one disturbed her during that time. That was her sacred hour. She told me once, "I need to meet myself before I meet the day." That's it. That's the heart of guarding your morning. You meet yourself first. You get grounded in who are before the world starts telling you who to be. Now, guarding your mornings doesn't mean they have to be silent or solitary. Some people fill that first hour with music, laughter, or even early conversations with loved ones. The key is that it's intentional. You decide what enters your space, not the algorithm, not the headlines, not the random whims of strangers on the internet. And listen, I'm not perfect at this. There are still mornings when I break my own rule. When I'm traveling or stressed, I sometimes slip back into old habits and start scrolling. But I notice the difference immediately. I feel less anchored, more scattered. And that's when I remember, this isn't about being perfect, it's about being protective. If you've never tried guarding your morning, start small. Pick one boundary and hold it for a week. Maybe it's no phone until after breakfast. Maybe it's reading something uplifting before you check email. Maybe it's sitting outside for 5 minutes to breathe and listen to the world waking up. What you're doing in those moments is telling yourself, my mind and heart deserve care before the demands begin. And once you've felt the difference, it's hard to go back to letting the world storm through your gate uninvited. So tomorrow morning, before you hand over your attention to a glowing screen or a flood of obligations, ask yourself, who gets through my gate first? And make sure it's something or someone that fills you, not empties you. Because the way you protect your morning determines the way your morning protects you. Sometimes, we underestimate the quiet power of reflection at the end of the day, but starting your morning with the end in mind can completely transform how you move through your hours. I've learned that life isn't just about rushing into action, ticking boxes, or proving our worth through productivity. It's about living with a sense of direction that is deeply rooted in our values. When you wake up and ask yourself, at the end of today, who do I want to have been? You start playing the long game of your soul. This is where the day stops being a blur of distractions and starts becoming an intentional act of creation. Every morning is an invitation, a blank canvas handed to you by life. And the truth is, whether you paint with colors of joy, brushstrokes of courage, or shades of quiet reflection, it's your choice. But here's the thing. If you don't pick up the brush early, the world will hand you its colors and tell you what your painting should look like. And that's when we lose ourselves in business, in meeting other people's expectations, in forgetting what actually matters. Starting your day with the end in mind is about reclaiming your agency before the day claims you. I used to wake up and dive straight into the noise, emails, messages, to-do lists, and by lunchtime, I was already feeling behind, like I was chasing something I couldn't quite catch. But then I began to ask myself, what story do I want to tell myself tonight when my head hits the pillow? That question shifted everything. Suddenly, I wasn't just reacting to the day, I was shaping it. If I wanted to end the day feeling proud, then I knew I had to choose courage over comfort in my decisions. If I wanted to end the day feeling connected, then I had to reach out, look people in the eye, and actually listen. This isn't about perfection, it's about alignment. It's about making small, intentional choices that reflect the person you're trying to become, not the one the world tries to shape for you. Because here's the raw truth, how we live our days is how we live our lives. And if we let our mornings slip into autopilot, our lives will follow suit. Some mornings, starting with the end in mind, will mean setting one clear, non-negotiable priority, something that matters deeply to you and aligns with your values. Other days, it will mean adjusting your pace, giving yourself permission to do less but be more present. And yes, there will be days when life throws curveballs so fast that your plan dissolves by 9 a.m. But even then, if you began the day anchored in intention, you'll navigate the chaos differently. You'll respond instead of react. You'll choose meaning over mindless motion. One of the most powerful parts of this practice is that it teaches you to separate the urgent from the important. Our culture often pushes urgency at us like it's oxygen. Answer this now. Do this first. Don't wait. But urgency is not always importance. In fact, Some of the most urgent things are distractions in disguise. When you start your day with the end in mind, you see through that noise. You learn to ask, will this matter at the end of today? Will it matter at the end of this year? At the end of my life? That's when the clutter falls away and the real priorities rise to the surface. I remember a friend once telling me that her mornings were so stressful, she felt like she lived the same day over and over, like a bad loop she couldn't escape. We worked together on starting her day differently, not with a rigid schedule or a mountain of goals, but with one simple question: what do I want to carry in my heart tonight? She told me that within a week, her days felt less like a treadmill and more like a walk she was choosing. She was still doing her job, still meeting deadlines, but she wasn't just surviving her days anymore. She was living them. And I think that's the point. When we begin our day with intention, the hours don't just pass, they serve us. We stop measuring our worth by how much we checked off and start measuring it by how deeply we showed up. At night, we get to lay our heads down knowing we lived. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but in a way that honored who we are and who we're becoming. So tomorrow morning, before you grab your phone, before you dive into the noise, pause. Ask yourself, at the end of this day, who do I want to have been? Write it down if you have to. Let that answer be the compass for your choices, your conversations, and even your silences. Because your life isn't just built in years, it's built in mornings like this. And when you start your day like that, you'll end it not just full of accomplishment, but full of meaning. Before the gravity of the day pulls you in every direction, fill yourself first. Gratitude, intention, movement, start your day full. And watch how it changes not just your morning, but your life.